Plenty of different players on the Chicago Bears offense deserve blame for the loss to the Rams on Sunday, while plenty of players on defense deserve a ton of credit for stepping up and holding up their end of the bargain.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. On the show today, we're going to take a deep dive into this Bears loss against the Rams, take a look at some of what wasn't working well on offense, and how some of that falls on Caleb Williams' shoulders for sure, some of it falls on some of the receivers, some of it falls on some of the offensive line, probably Ben Johnson a little bit in there. The point being, a lot of blame to go around there. Not too many players are blameless, but also you can't put it all on any one individual's shoulders there. And the inverse true on the defensive side of the ball. We'll take a look at where Dennis Allen's game plan was really smart, but also really well executed by this defense, with a bunch of key players stepping up to helping this group play better than maybe we ever thought they would coming into this matchup with the Rams. And we'll wrap up by checking in on the latest Bears coaching staff news, with Eric Bieniemy set to take over as Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator. We'll look at his impact on the running game, as well as some potential replacements with connections to Ben Johnson that are pretty impressive names in the world of running backs coaches, at least. But we start with this Bears offense, because when you look at like the biggest reason why the Bears lost this game, it was an inability to score more than 17 points. Right? Defense only gave up 17 in regulation, 20 overall. That should be a defensive performance that's good enough to win the game. Your offense just has to hit that 20-point mark, and they were unable to. So I wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper into, like, not just how, but why. Like, how we kind of saw, right? Like, getting stuffed in some short yardage situations, some drop passes, some interceptions, some turnovers in there, right? But like, I wanted to go a little bit deeper as to like what was behind some of that stuff. And to me, it revealed a lot of blame to go around. And I don't want that to like sound like, oh, well, it's not Caleb Williams' fault, it's everybody else's fault, because it can be both, right? It's not black and white, it's gray. It is partially Caleb Williams' fault for sure. He missed too many throws in this game, even more than in other recent games. I don't know if we could say he had a bad game because of some of the miraculous throws he did make, but it wasn't Caleb Williams' best day overall. A really strong finish, but overall some inconsistency there. Offensive line, not as good as it had been in recent weeks, and I think you can put a portion of that on the left tackle, left guard change, but that doesn't explain all of it for certain. Same thing in the running game, and same thing with Ben Johnson, right? Like, you can't say this was all Caleb's fault because it ignores what everyone else did. You can't say it's all the receiver's fault because it ignores what Caleb did, or it's all the offensive line's fault, or it's all Ben Johnson's fault. Like, it's a little bit of everyone's fault, which is frustrating, but I want to go through a little bit of like where we see that. Like, for example, in this game, Caleb Williams was under pressure on 40% of his dropbacks, which is a bit high. I think he was typically living in the 25, 30, 35% type of range. So this was a little bit on the higher end. Sometimes he has a way of inviting pressure in terms of holding onto the ball a little bit too long. Like, the high pressure rate isn't 100% then on the offensive line's fault, but he was generally getting rid of the ball fairly quickly for a lot of this game. It's just some plays he did have to hold on to the ball longer, and some plays the offensive line got beat more quicker. But one of the things that really stood out to me from the pressure aspect of this is that Caleb Williams, not only was he not sacked a single time in this game, but the new thing for this contest was that Caleb Williams did not throw the ball away a single time in this game. And that was a surprise to me. I didn't even really notice that having watched it live. But Caleb Williams has thrown the ball away at least twice in every game since the New York Giants game. It's been, 9 games in a row, I think. He's had at least 2 throwaways. He had 4 against the Lions. He had 5 against the Packers the second game. He had 7 against the Packers the first time they played. That was a season high. He had 2 last week against the Green Bay Packers. Like, he has been throwing the ball away a lot more as a means of avoiding negative plays and avoiding sacks when he's under pressure. In this game, not a single ball that was intentionally thrown away where he's not even aiming at a receiver. There were some passes where he's probably throwing a low percentage ball, knowing that if he misses, it's basically like a throwaway, but still giving his guy a shot at it. But no intentionally chucking it out of bounds, chucking it at the feet, hurling it out of the back of the end zone. And I wonder if that wasn't some of him maybe trying to do a little bit too much in this game and feeling like I can't afford to just throw away an incomplete pass and, just take an L on that play, that I have to. It's the playoffs, it's the divisional round. I have to try and attempt something downfield. And I think that contributed to some of the other misses that we saw. In this game, he had 6 passes that were pass breakups by Rams defensive backs, where he's firing it in there, trying to force a throw to a receiver who's covered, and a Rams DB breaks it up. And I'm not even here to say that that's a bad thing, giving your receiver a shot at it in those plays. But I do wonder if there's a survivorship bias there. We say, 6 pass breakups. That means he's given receivers, like he's testing tight coverage. He's giving his guys a shot at it. That's a good thing. Yes, but you also then don't notice the plays when he's given a guy a shot at it and it's picked off, right? Like that, the difference between that play being a PBU and an interception. Well, there were a couple of those in this game, 3 to be exact. And, we can sit and spend a bunch of time arguing the DJ Moore interception in overtime and DJ Moore's effort and all that stuff. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's podcast, so I'm not going to rehash that whole conversation. But you don't know if DJ Moore runs that route, like maybe that's a pass breakup instead of a pick, which is a better play, but still, is he forcing a throw there? Or on the other interception that was a kind of a misread coverage with a cornerback dropped up in zone, right? Like, is he trying to force it into some coverage that he's thinking he can get into? And 6 times he got away with it as just pass breakups. And I'm sure a couple he forced in there that were caught, but what's the risk versus the reward there? And are they intercepted versus pass breakups? I think there were 7 other throws that were just straight up inaccurate, and then 2 of the interceptions where he's just kind of misreading the coverage in there. So there were more missed throws from Caleb Williams in this game than in previous games. It was a lower accuracy game from Caleb Williams than we had seen the last few weeks. We'd seen kind of ups and downs over the course of the season. This was more towards the down in terms of accuracy. Again, that is overshadowed, I think rightly so, by the 4th down game-tying touchdown to Cole Kmet and some of the other really impressive throws. I do think in this game, and as in so many others, the good largely outweighs the bad. But there was still some bad in there that you're looking for Caleb Williams to be better and continue to improve as his career progresses. In the running game, some similar stuff there, where the Bears could not consistently run up the middle. And when you look at it by run concept, that really bore out. The Bears tried to run those man duo concepts where you're just pounding up the middle in double teams and could get nothing on those plays. They tried even the inside zone, right, where it's zone blocking, but you're still going right up the middle. Couldn't get anything. All of their good runs came on those outside zone, stretch zone runs where they tried to get to the edge. Between Monangai and Swift, they ran 12 of those stretch runs for 58 yards, just under 5 yards per carry. Not a bad day at the office. All of their other handoffs were for 54 yards. 20 carries for 54 yards. Under 3 yards a carry on everything up the middle. Almost 5 yards a carry on everything to the outside. Some of that was the Rams loading up on the interior, and they'd take their nose tackle and a couple of their defensive linemen and squeeze them all in and go guard, center, guard in a bear front type of look. Part of it was, I thought Drew Dahlman struggled quite a bit in pass protection and run blocking, maybe more so in run blocking. Chris Collinsworth pointed out in the broadcast, Jordan McFadden had some ups for sure in the run blocking department, had some trouble here and there as well. I think especially on some of those inside, sort of power runs. Joe Tooney gave up some power on some of those inside runs as well. I think when you got this offensive line flowing horizontally, they had the mobility and everything to pass off blocks and free up some space for the backs. When they were trying to go downhill, they just didn't quite have the power and the horses, especially on the interior, to move the Rams off the line of scrimmage nearly well enough. And I think you combine that with, 4+ dropped passes, a couple penalties in there, right? Miscommunications. Then you have getting stuffed on those runs and some Caleb Williams inaccuracies and maybe some play calling questions from Ben Johnson. And that's how you have an offense that only scores 17 points and just comes up short at the end. The margin of error in the postseason is so small when you're playing an NFC championship caliber team in the Los Angeles Rams. Like, I don't think it was a horrible day at the office for the offense, but it wasn't good enough. And you can put the blame pretty much all around. I think the running backs don't deserve much of the blame. Colson Loveland got hurt, so he doesn't deserve much of the blame. And, not everybody deserves blame, but a lot of guys deserve blame, Caleb Williams included. Defensively, I think it's the inverse. A lot of guys deserve a lot of credit. A few guys that maybe didn't step up and make the plays you were looking for, but a lot of guys playing some of their best ball in the most important game. So we'll take a look at what worked so well for this Bears defense to hold Matthew Stafford and the Rams down next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looks good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites because Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. According to Indeed data, their sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your premium placement it deserves, give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Well, now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. You always have known the game, but you've never had a dynamic way to really apply that knowledge. But now you can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involve significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered future commission merchant and swap firm. This Bears defense stepped up above and beyond what we were hoping and expecting against the Rams. And I think Dennis Allen deserves a ton of credit for putting a proactive game plan in place that wasn't the same old approach and then you adjust on the fly when you realize it's not working against the Rams, but coming out and saying, no, we're going to throw something at them a little bit different than what we've been doing in previous weeks, and they're not going to be ready for it. And they weren't ready for it. And I think within that, a bunch of players deserve credit for stepping up and playing well. And I think the number of players that deserve positive credit is even larger than the number of players that maybe still disappointed a little bit in there. But like this game stood out to me right away in terms of coming out aggressive at the start, but then you saw Dennis Allen like do a good job of like mixing it up to try and stay a little bit more, I don't want to say one step ahead of the Rams, but a little bit less predictable, right? Like they came out and blitzed on like, I think 4 of the first 5 plays or 3 of the first 4 plays of Matthew Stafford dropping back to pass. It was like, all right, blitz is coming, blitz is coming, blitz is coming. The rest of the first half, they slowed down a little bit more. I think they blitzed on like about a third of Matthew Stafford's passing plays in the first half, but like came up blitzing a bunch and then backed off a little bit. And then second half again, blitzing some more, right? So it was kind of this like, oh, we're blitzing and you're going to adjust to our blitz? Well, then we'll take our foot off the gas a little bit. And now you're trying to get rid of it quick, but we're not blitzing you anymore. So you don't need to. So you're giving up yards, and then they go to halftime trying to figure out what to do. You come out aggressive, blitzing a little bit more again. And I think they did a good job of mixing that up and sprinkling that in to keep the Rams off balance. And more specifically, not just coming out blitzing, because he had blitzed early in some games in recent weeks, but the big change that we have been asking for the last few weeks. I don't know if Dennis Allen is listening to this podcast. If he is, Dennis, really great job with the game plan against the Rams. Can you imagine if Dennis Allen is just like, I got to check out Locked On Bears today to figure out what I got to do in this playoff game? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a joke, I promise. But what we finally saw was zone blitzing. We've been talking for the last month about how they man-to-man blitzed against the Packers in the first two Packers games, and Jordan Love tore them apart. Man-to-man blitzes against the 49ers, and they put up 40 points on you. Man-to-man blitzes against the Packers in the third game a little bit, and still got the ball moving against you pretty good. And it's like, how many times are you going to sit there and leave your cornerbacks in man-to-man coverage with no safety help or very little help on the back end and have speedy receivers outrun you over the field? I think Dennis Allen realized in this game, when you got Puka Nacua on one side and Devonta Adams on the other side, you don't even, why bother pretending that you can cover them in man coverage? I get thinking, hey, maybe Jalen Johnson can cover Romeo Doubs, and they can cover some of these Packers receivers, at least not named Christian Watson. You could cover some of the 49ers receivers. They didn't have star power at wide receiver. Like, I get why you might think, hey, we'll try some man-to-man coverage on them because I think I can trust our guys to do that. And I can see also where you go to the Rams and say, screw that. We're not going to be able to cover them one-on-one in man coverage. But in this game, they blitzed 15 times, and 7 of them were zone blitzes. Like, still a lot of man blitzing, but it wasn't all man blitzing where every time they're showing a blitz, it's man coverage, it's predictable for the defense. And they got Stafford on that a few times where I think he's thinking it's going to be man-to-man. They sort of disguise it. They switch to zone. And not that you're like fooling Matthew Stafford in terms of something he's never seen before, but he has an expectation for what your tendencies are. All season they've been doing this, and I'm seeing that look, so I think they're going to do what their tendency was. You break that tendency, and so you fool him a little bit in that regard. And that's when the blitz would speed him up. He got rid of the ball a lot quicker when blitzes came after him. He threw the ball a lot shorter when blitzes came after him. He was a lot less accurate and put a couple of balls in harm's way when blitzes got after him there. They blitzed. They were a lot more effective getting pressure on the quarterback on those blitzes. I think out of the blitzes they ran, they got pressure on about half of those blitz plays, whereas when they just rushed on a 4-man rush, it was like under 20% of their 4-man rushes actually got pressure on Matthew Stafford. So it was working. Now, it was a mixed bag as to when it was working. So when we talk about like players who stepped up and players who made big plays in this, first of all, Montez Sweat was the only Bears pass rusher, besides Andrew Billings of all people, to have more than one pressure on the quarterback in this game. He had 4. Like, I don't think it was some brilliant masterclass game from Montez Sweat, but he's consistently done this. Like, he's getting decent pressure. He's not a game changer, number 1 pass rusher that you really have a ton of confidence in taking over a game, but he's not a bad player. He's just maybe not quite as great as we want him to be, but he's good. He's good, but not as great as we want him to be. But like, he did enough of his job in this game. But like, none of the other like defensive line pass rushers really got anything consistently going. I think Austin Booker got 1 pressure actually in this game. Some good plays in running game and some good hustle on some of those to chase down a little bit, but not a lot of like beating the offensive linemen across from him. But like, from a blitzing standpoint, Kyler Gordon blitzed 7 times. He got pressure on 3 of them. Like, he was hard to block. Because sometimes when you're blitzing, right, like the offense is sliding to your side, and even if you're the blitzer, you're not the guy who's getting free. You're blitzing so that someone else gets free, right? So like blitz numbers and like blitz productivity in terms of like how often you're getting pressure on your blitzes isn't always a perfect measurement, but like Gordon was 3 for 7. Jaquan Brisker blitzed once in this game, and he went unblocked off the edge and sacked Matthew Stafford. Like, there's an effectiveness to some of these guys that know what they're doing, know when they're doing it, know how to disguise it, and know how to finish when they get to the quarterback. Whereas Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker, blitzed 9 times in this game. Do you know how many pressures he got? 0. 0 pressures on 9 blitzes from Tremaine Edmonds. Even C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who had been a fairly effective blitzer for the Bears this season, blitzed 6 times in this game. 0 pressures on C.J. Gardner-Johnson's 6 blitzes. Credit to Dennis Allen for, you bring linebackers here. You brought Jalen Johnson a couple times, Kyler Gordon from this side, C.J. Gardner-Johnson from that side, Brisker once from over here. Like, it was coming from a lot of different places, and it wasn't always obvious who was going to rush from where with what coverage was behind it. And that to me was like the most important part. They played man coverage a lot less in this game in general, blitzing or not, than we had seen for most of at least the last couple of months here. That they were in man coverage about a fourth of the time. 12 out of the 46 dropbacks, I think, from Matthew Stafford, including overtime, were man coverage. And a lot more of it was in the second half. They did a really good job of mixing up coverage. It was like a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 2, a little less cover 4, mixed in some cover 1. Like, it was all over the place. And same thing with the zone blitzes too. It wasn't just like, oh, well, instead of going man-to-man all the time, we're just going to do cover 3 because it looks like cover 1, so it's easy for us to just kind of do that because it's kind of the same thing for the defense anyway. Like, no, he blitzed 4 times out of a cover 2 shell and then twice out of a cover 3 shell and once out of a cover 6 look. Like, it was such a more multiple, creative, and unpredictable Bears defense that we've been looking for the last month from Dennis Allen, and I'm not sure why it took this long, but it came at the best possible time for the defense to do its job in a game where they absolutely needed it. And like, it wasn't enough for the team to win, but the defense absolutely checked all the boxes and did their job. And I think a bunch of players, I mean, Kevin Byard covered really well. Brisker had a great game. Jalen Johnson stepped up quite a bit. Kyler Gordon stepped up quite a bit. Even Nashawn Wright stepped up quite a bit. Like, so many guys in this defense really held their own, and it was nice to see. It was encouraging to see, and it feels like, all right, there's some encouragement that, hey, like, yeah, the defense needs to get a lot better this offseason, but it's not like you got to blow the whole thing up. And really, I mean, they had their hands on at least 2 Matthew Stafford interceptions. If they hold on to any of those, it's probably a Bears win and a totally different ball game. So they were right there doing their job and stepping up. So that was really encouraging to see. But there's going to be change on this Bears defense for sure. Both your safeties are free agents. What are they going to do with their linebackers? They got to do something to upgrade this pass rush. And there's going to be change on the Bears offense. Heck, change is already starting on the Chicago Bears offense, as running backs coach Eric Bieniemy is fully set to take over as Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator. So we'll take a look at his impact on these Bears running backs and a couple of names as possible replacements that I think you can be excited about, even if they're just running backs coaches you might not know that much about, next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by DripDrop. Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is one of the easiest wins you can make, because when I stay on top of it, I know my energy and focus and mood all level up. But let's be real. Plain water doesn't always cut it. It gets boring, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. And that's where DripDrop comes in. Doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your mind and body work better. Think clearer focus, better energy, elevated mood, and even that fresh skin glow. Their science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of top college and pro teams because it rehydrates you faster and more effectively than water alone. Right now, DripDrop is offering our listeners 20% off your first order. Go to DripDrop.com and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's DripDrop.com promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at DripDrop.com and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Today's podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is in full-blown playoff mode with the conference championship games coming up this weekend. And every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, FanDuel is giving all users a profit boost pack that'll be waiting for you inside the app on every NFL playoff game day. Each time you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets you like most. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. It's more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. You make your picks, and then you apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs heat up. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Thanks again for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're one of our everyday listeners, really want to thank you so much. We do it for you. You guys are the lifeblood of Locked On Bears podcast. And if you want to take that everyday listening to the next level, you should check out our Locked On Podcast Network's Everydayer Club, where you can get access to an ad-free audio feed of Locked On Bears that's compatible with your Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or every other major podcasting app. And it also comes with an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayers Club Discord server that includes a group chat just for listeners of this show, exclusive to members of the Everydayers Club. If you want to check it out, go to lockedonbears.supercast.com. You can see the link in the show notes of this podcast and every episode of Locked On Bears if you want to check that out and keep up with everything we're doing 5 days a week, ad-free, and keeping up with all of, say, the Bears coaching staff changes. I'm sure there are more coming beyond just Eric Bieniemy. Initially, it was reported that he's going to be interviewing with the Chiefs job. Then reports coming out that their Chiefs are fully planning on hiring him to be their new offensive coordinator, even though Matt Nagy hasn't accepted a head coaching job yet. Matt Nagy's contract evidently is expiring And so they assume he's going to get one of the 10 jobs that's open now. And so they're just kind of letting that go and saying, we're getting a replacement right now anyway. And we speculated on this very podcast last week. Gosh, I can't remember what day was that. It might have even been Friday, or was it Wednesday? One of the days we talked about Bears coaches a little bit. And we talked about how this was likely to be the case. Now it is much more, I guess it's probably not technically officially the case, but it has been reported as going to be officially the case. So not a big surprise, but definitely a real loss for this Bears offense. And you can say, well, Ben Johnson's the architect of the running game. So, how much are they really going to be missing by losing Eric Bieniemy? And I will grant you that. Like, I don't think, for example, like the running game's going to fall off and go to crap and be terrible next season. But I do think we saw the best version of DeAndre Swift this season. And I mean that like individually as a runner with the ball in his hands, like running harder, running more decisively, seeing the field really well, having great vision, and fighting hard for yards and getting yards after contact, not dancing around too much behind the line of scrimmage or trying to do too much. Like, this was literally a career high in total rushing yards, and I believe in yards per game, but not technically yards per carry, but it was also a career high 9 touchdowns. Like, this was, Eric Bieniemy helped squeeze the best version of DeAndre Swift. I don't think that means Swift is going to be a bad running back next year, if he's even a Chicago Bear next year, which we'll have time to talk about over the course of the offseason. But I do think it was very evident that, like, this was not just, they gave Swift better run blocking, and so he had a better season. Like, I think it was both. I think we saw Swift be a better runner and get better support from his offensive line and the offense. And then I think, like, same kind of thing with Kyle Monangai. Like, we knew he was a tough physical runner who broke tackles coming in as a 7th-round pick. But you do not see very many 7th-round picks come in and rush for 750 yards as a rookie. The Bears were the only team in the NFL with 2 rushers over 750 yards. Kyle Monangai finished 24th in the NFL in rushing. Think about that. The Bears had 2 running backs in the top 25 rushing yards in the NFL this season. You can chalk that up to Monangai being a total sleeper in the draft for sure, but I can't help but give Eric Bieniemy at least some credit for helping Kyle Monangai not just be a tough between the tackles physical runner, but like his longest run against the Rams was one of those outside zone stretch runs where he broke free and had the only 15-plus yard run in the game for the Bears offense. Like, I think Monangai did even more for the Bears this season than we expected, even liking him a lot as a 7th-round pick coming out of his college tape. Like, I think Bieniemy deserves a lot of credit for coaching those guys hard and developing them, especially when they had injuries and they had a game where Monangai started and Travis Homer was the number 2 and they called up Britton Brown from the practice squad. Like, they had plenty of times when the running back could have been an issue this season, and the running game rarely slowed down. And when they did, it felt more like the Bears were abandoning it as opposed to like it not being a good enough showing from the running game. Like, I guess they started a little slow in week 3 and 4, but they figured it out from a scheme standpoint after week 6. And from then on, this was a very good running team. And they will lose something by not having Eric Bieniemy. Now, the good news is Ben Johnson has enough of a coaching tree and connections here to replace him with somebody competent. There are some names to like here that we'll run through very briefly here that you might not know, you might not have heard of them by name unless you're a real NFL coaching staff nerd. But if you want to at least just take my word for it, that these are a couple of really highly respected running backs coaches that are both connected to Ben Johnson and available right now to join the coaching staff. I think the biggest name would be Deuce Staley, who you might recall he was on the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff for like 7 or 8 years. He was the running backs coach and assistant head coach there when they were going on those Super Bowl runs, at least for a while there, and always did a good job with those Eagles running backs. He then jumped over to the Detroit Lions for 2 years, 2021 and 2022, as assistant head coach and running backs coach, coaching with Ben Johnson. He spent the last 2 seasons as the Cleveland Browns running backs coach. Obviously, some tough situations in Cleveland, but like, given that they fired Stefanski and that staff is changing over, I would assume Deuce Staley would be available if Ben Johnson would like to reunite with one of his former running backs coaches. He has a very strong reputation for coaching running backs. He played in the NFL as well. I think he played. I think he played running back. Yeah, I think running back and receiver is what he played. But I think he was mostly a running back in the NFL on the Eagles. Played with Brian Westbrook on some of those teams. But then, like, he was in those Doug Peterson Eagles offenses that could run the ball really, really well. And then, of course, the Lions started running the ball really well when he came with Dan Campbell, and they got that running game going eventually. He jumped over to the Panthers for a couple years and had the running game going there. And then even the Browns have, they've gotten, some decent running back success with Deuce Staley. So he's a super well-respected running backs coach. I would be thrilled if the Bears landed him as a replacement for Eric Bieniemy. Another name, super, super well-respected, and I've met this person before, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but Eric Studesville. He has been the Miami Dolphins running backs coach since 2017. So he's been there almost a decade, much like a Ben Johnson, right? Has survived multiple coaching regimes there. And he's been there so long, he coached with Ben Johnson on the Miami Dolphins. But he is one of the most well-respected running backs coaches in the NFL. He actually was on the Bears coaching staff long ago in the late 90s, and then was with the Bills for a while, was with the Broncos for a little bit, and was actually briefly their interim head coach with the Denver Broncos. Studesville, I have met him before at the Senior Bowl and some of the college football all-star games. He happens to have grown up not far from where I grew up and went to college, the same college as my dad and my brother. So like, there's some loose connections there. He's also a super well-respected running backs coach who has done this for a long time under a bunch of different coaches and has connections to Ben Johnson there. Last name I'll throw in is a name I was not as familiar with before I started digging into this. Jeff Nixon. He is currently the offensive coordinator and running backs coach at Syracuse University. Yeah, ho-hum. But before that, he was the Giants running backs coach. He was the Panthers running backs coach. He was a Dolphins running backs coach before. He was a 49ers tight ends coach in there. He's been around the NFL quite a bit, has coached some good running backs along the stretch, coached with Ben Johnson on those Dolphins as well. So plenty of connections, and a guy who's been in a lot of systems and has a lot of experience to aid Bears running backs. I think there's some really good options. Maybe Ben Johnson will pull one out that we're not expecting for, but if and when, or whenever he does, of course, not if, it is when he does, you can be sure we'll break down that move and any other right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. And it's going to give you another opportunity to listen again tomorrow and bear down.